the stream on the PlayChess.com server, and it's also being streamed on Twitch TV / King's Crusher. So it's usually every Tuesday at around this time, 7 o'clock London time, 8 PM server time. That's the usual default time, but you need to check the calendar on the PlayChess server to make sure. So the first game I want to go over is a game. These are games from the Olympiad of 1986, which was held in Dubai, and we're going to carry on our focus on Garry Kasparov, who at that time carried a FIDE rating now of 2740 in 1986. He was actually the world champion as well. So there was a strong Russian team with both Kasparov and Karpov playing. In the final scores, though, they only narrowly won the event, about half a point ahead of England. England had a very strong team that year. So, okay, let's kick off. So, Kasparov against Anthony Miles. So, a strong England team. I assume this is board 1. Kasparov actually got gold for his board. So, he kicked off with D4. So, this is interesting. You might think Kasparov using E4 a lot, but it seems in Olympiad so far we've seen a lot of 1D4s. And Miles reacted with knight F6, and we see it after C4 E6. So the Nimzo Indian, or wanting a Nimzo Indian, is a very popular system for black against D4. So knight F3, not wanting to play knight C3. I think this is the more popular move nowadays. Just play knight F3, inviting Queen's Indian systems. We see B6, so black wants to exert more influence on E4. So a standard move, putting more influence on the E4 square. Now, actually, knight C3, we have a kind of transposition into a variation of the Nimzo Indian after bishop B4. So bishop G5. So white also pins black's knight, so both knights now pinned. Black carries on putting pressure on the central E4 square here with bishop B7. And white plays E3. And now H6. White doesn't want to voluntarily give up the dark square bishop. So plays actually bishop H4. Just wants to adjust something one moment. Actually, if I put the chat for that one over there, and so adjusting the chat. I think that's better. Yep. Just getting still used to some of the layouts needed for this stream. Okay, back to the game. Sorry, pardon me. G5 was played. Bishop G3, and now knight E4. So putting more pressure on C3. How does white defend C3? Now, many of you might consider in this position a sort of passive move, but no. Actually, Kasparov, this is probably fair. He plays knight D2, so he offers a pawn potentially, but it would be quite risky for black to take this. It would accelerate white's initiative, I guess. So black elected the seemingly safer option, just to take on G3. H takes G3, and this dynamism on the H file and the sort of weaknesses. There's an interesting thing that black did here, a seemingly strange retreat. Now, I wonder if you can guess the seemingly strange move that black played here. Some sort of opening theory, I guess. Can any of you guess the move if I give you 20 seconds to have a look at this while I shut the door as well? So 20 seconds, what does black play in this position? So this is Anthony Miles. Sometimes he plays some unusual moves. Right. Okay. Okay, Anthony Miles, yes, he plays a retreat move, bishop f8. Okay, so it's actually got some logical purposes. It fits in with the needs of the position. It might break some sort of rule of classical development, you might think, but it seems to fit in with the requirements of the position. And Kasparov lashes out a bit, plays f4. Okay, now we see the fianchetto, bishop g7. Now some pressure comes on black's queen side immediately with this move queen a4, which sometimes Kasparov just plays queen a4, and in his My Story videos sometimes he just says his main priority is to get pieces developed, but queen a4, you know, has a lasting impact on the queen side here. You know, if black is going to castle queen side, the queen's very useful on a4, so maybe, you know, he felt there was no point coming here because black's final destination will be the queen side for that king. So knight c6, and now white castles queen side, and black prepares to castle queen side, so queen e7. And of course it seems that, you know, maybe in the future this bishop could also be liberated with a c5 and maybe a bishop a6. You might think that sort of thing could be risky for black at some point soon. For the moment, Kasparov is content to play bishop e2. So he's now connected his rooks. So that's one of the goals of an opening usually, as well as develop pieces, sometimes connecting rooks, really good stuff. So black castles and connects rooks. And now both sides improve their king safety a little bit. So king b1, king b8. But there's no draw going to be agreed here. This is going to be a fighting game. I noticed, actually, we're going to find out that Kasparov did lose one game in this event. Maybe I shouldn't spoil it, but most of the games, you know, very hard fought, decisive games from Kasparov in this event. Just explain why it's d6 is prevented. That's a good point. So d6 was prevented. What here maybe because of bishop f3. Is that the point? As well, bishop f3 would be embarrassing here. So that pressure is really important as well. So king b1, king b8. So rook c1. It looks as though, you know, c5 might be on the cards at some point, or maybe even a3 looks as though that might be useful to cover the b4 square. In fact, on this last note, the b4 square isn't covered at the moment, and black does make use of that to play queen b4, wanting an exchange of queens, but Kasparov doesn't want the exchange of queens. He plays queen d1. And now the black queen goes back rather cheekily to f8. So this is, you know, strange looking moves from Anthony Miles so far, but it all makes sense in its own way. So bishop f3 looks as though, you know, maybe d5 could be on the cards, because after all, white has clamped down on the e5 square. But on the other hand, the bishop's just very nice here. Black plays f5 as though the bishop's going to be removed potentially with g4 from this diagonal. And in this position, actually, after f5, curiously, Kasparov retracts an earlier move. In this particular position, he plays queen a4 again. But here, I think queen b4 is unplayable now, because can you guys see a refutation of queen b4? I think I've spotted it. Can you guys, if I give you 10 seconds or 20 seconds starting from now, queen b4 is not playable here because of anyone? Right, so yeah, Oswald and Sparky got this right. Margle, yeah, getting this right. Okay, hi guys. Okay, so some of you are paying attention. Good, good. PTAC, yeah, also. Okay, bishop takes c6. Good, good. Give yourself 50 points. So who can collect the most points before the end of the game? Okay, keep track of your own points. So this seems to win a piece because queen takes, you know, bishop takes. Right. So actually black evicted the bishop from the diagonal with g4, and now actually Kasparov curiously gives up voluntarily the light square bishop. Bishop takes c6. Now black recaptured with the pawn. Now if he takes with the bishop, I think on brief inspection earlier of this game that white might have a useful move, knight b5, because this looks dangerous, but it might not be the reason. If you have any better reason, you know, please let me know, because in the game d takes c6 was played, which seems to cover up, you know, b5 from knight b5. You know, if well, a6 is unplayable because you could just play queen takes, but you know, maybe, I don't know, a4, you know, maybe this is dangerous because of c5. Because then let's imagine knight c4, knight takes a5. This could be dangerous for the king because we've also got the possibility of a rook coming in. So I guess this looks a bit dangerous, this knight b5. And if black, you know, did take on b5, then I guess, you know, this is useful, isn't it? This c file, you can double up rooks, put pressure on c7. It still looks dangerous. So it seems black voluntarily accepted doubled pawns here. D takes c6, and we get c5, and it looks as though this is a problem piece strategically. The quality of the b7 bishop has dramatically dropped. By the way, I haven't mentioned this on YouTube yet, but from one of my losses at Southend, my only loss at Southend, I think it's important, this is a kind of new theory, that it's important generally with every move you play to at least look at, you know, the piece quality of all the pieces and be on the lookout for bad pieces. And it looks as though this is a bad piece, and you know, a large part of the strategy can now kind of revolve around the b7 bishop. So obviously when you play openings, etc., it's good to avoid bad pieces, and especially, for example, in the French defence, it's easy sometimes to get a very bad bishop, but also sometimes in the Queen's Gambit variations, you know, it's easy to get a bad bishop. In a lot of games it's easy actually to get, as black, a bad light square bishop, so one should be on the lookout for that. The bishop on g7 is also not brilliant at the moment because there's no strategic break for black easily now to undermine d4. So bishop on g7 is also kind of locked in by these pawns, as Chess Explained as just written. Bishop g7 is also dead, but isn't b7 also dead? Both these bishops look very, very unhealthy bishops here. Would you all agree? But tactically it seems something's, you know, also going on in relation to this knight. You know, why can't black take on c5? Because possibly, you know, let's just briefly examine if takes here, seemingly using that tactic. Probably just knight b3 is very effective. Knight b3, it might not be the reason, because cd, you know, I'm not sure tactically. Knight a5 is looking dangerous because of queen b3 here. So, you know, say takes queen b3, you know, end of game, isn't it? That's possibly the reason why, you know, the tactical idea. You know, computers wouldn't reject any ugly looking moves if they thought they were good. So can we actually disprove totally b takes c5 here? Is it because of knight b3? Would you all agree with that, or is there a stronger move? I would say getting a knight to a5 looks pretty good. Because you can't take, you know, the here. Possibly knight b3. Chess explain. Would you agree knight b3 to a5? Is that one of the stronger plans, or is there something better if this was played? Or knight c4 to a5? Same thing. Anyway, this didn't happen in the game. B takes c5. It's just. I'm just speculating. In the game, actually, Black radically still tries to use this liability, this temporary liability, it seems, with e5. He tries to break out this with e5. So, yeah. Okay, so knight b3 and carnage. Okay, yeah, just playing right. So, so e5. White took with f takes e5. So bishop takes e5. And now knight e2. As though, you know, once the bishop returns back somewhere, then knight f4 looks like a very nice knight on f4. So in fact that happens now. It's on a beautifully placed square in front of these pawns, shielded on the f-file, poking into key light squares, threatening to win the exchange immediately. So it looks very nice, this knight f4. Okay, so queen e8, protecting the e6 square. Rook c3, protecting also e3 now from the glare of the queen. b5, really this bishop's getting worse now with these pawns here and here. The bishop hasn't got much scope. Queen c2, bishop c8. And now peeling open the queen side with a4 also has the effect, you know, if a takes, c takes, you know, d5 is being undermined, making this knight more effective for d5 control. Okay, so rook h7 here. White peels open a little bit the queen side, and now c6. And this pawn is established now, a very dangerous pawn. White is free to treble, you know, the pressure of support for that c6 pawn. a6, and now rook c1. So a mighty pawn, a fawn pawn, thorn, fawn pawn on c6. Yeah. So rook d6, queen b3 now, you know, pins that pawn, meaning that knight c4 is now possible. Knight a5 or knight e5, not really knight e5, but knight c4 is on the cards. Rook e7, and now knight c4 is actually played, attacking the rook and offering c6. So a pawn sack, knight a5, and the knight's reached that very, very dangerous square and is reinforcing c6 as an outpost square. So rook takes c3, queen takes c3. And you'll note also knight d5 is now on the cards, which is dangerous to consider. Bishop b7 guarding, it seems, you know, the d5 square, but it can be taken. And knight d5 happens anyway, so the rook and bishop are attacked. Okay. Knight takes f6, which wins the c7 pawn, because that rook is now defending, overloaded. So queen takes c7, king a8. And curiously, this next move is quite curious, actually. If I give you all 20 seconds, what would you play for white here? It's a very nice attacking move. it seems. There's a very nice attacking move for white. So what does white play here to increase the advantage? It's an infiltration type move. If I give you a little clue. By the way, on Play Chess DE, we seem to have some very strong players on this one. Hi Oswald, hi Dumbledore. You guys have got higher ratings than me. I hope you can chip in. So you've got blitz ratings of 2556 and 2584. This is from the 1986 Dubai Olympiad. So Kasparov against Anthony Miles, in case you've come in late for this game. So what does white play here to increase the pressure for his attack? So there's only two heavy pieces left now. Not rook c6. We can rule out rook c6 spiking. It's rook takes c6. No. No. So anyone else? Anyone? No one's guessing this one, are they? It's not a wham bam type move, is it? And it's not d5, Morads. It's not d5. No. It's not queen g7. It's not d5. Right, someone's managed to you put bets on two moves there. I see, PTAC. Which move in particular would you choose then, if you had to choose from your 50-50 choice there? What did Kasparov, do you think, played here, if you weren't looking at the score sheet? Okay, you guys should hide the score sheet on Play Chess DE, yeah? PlayChess.com, I mean. Hide the score sheet. Everyone on stream is getting this wrong apart from Chess Explained. It's rook c5, so I'll put you out of your misery. So what's going on? Well, there's a threat now of rook d5 to d8, which would be devastating. Also, you might think, you know, queen e3, instead of rook d5, maybe we can do it with tempo. What about, is rook e5? Well, no, here, actually, just check might also be devastating. Check immediately is probably, I guess, mating. Is it? Whoops. Is it mating? The kid's going to escape here. Oh dear, hang on. White's losing this. So it can't be that, can it? So I wonder actually, well, if it's not check, or is it? I don't know. What about rook e5 as well, or rook d5? What's the follow-up here? Is this so trivial? Should we mention what the follow-up is? This looks good with the idea of just rook e8. Just leave the king kind of trapped, yeah? Unless, did I miss a mate here? Probably this is the sort of position I miss a mate, an easy mate. Is there an easy mate in 2 or something? Queen d8. Ah, yes, that picks up the rook. There's a loose piece here. That looks pretty crushing, actually. Check. Maybe. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Queen d8. Yeah, that's pretty good. Queen. Yeah. So anyway, so after rook c5, queen b8 was played. Now, okay, another little sort of move, queen d7, which now threatens rook c8, among other things. I'll keep myself vague on that. So I think rook c8 is the major threat. So rook f8, and now the finishing little touch here, which you might find is surprising as the final crushing move. Can you all guess it? What is the final crushing move in this position? 20 seconds, starting from now. Anyone? Sorry, back him up. Let you think about this. Hold on a sec. So I'm doing my stream, yeah? I'll be back later, yeah? Paul? Paul? Okay, so it's actually so you seem to be all saying rook c7. You see, I'm glad I'm not taking everything for granted in this game. Now, rook c7 wasn't played by Kasparov. It wasn't. Because what does it actually... okay, you're threatening queen c6. That does look strong. Now, Chess Explained has put a potential defensive resource here to this move. Remember, you've only got 2 major pieces to carry out this attack. This isn't what was played. I think, can you all see the defensive resource if you had played rook c7? What's the defensive resource? It's been mentioned on stream here. I'm going to put you out of your misery. I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. This isn't great because of queen b6. Thanks, just expect queen b6. So if check, you know, king here, you're defending b7. So actually, maybe a more, you know, much more accurate move was played here. Actually, rook c6, rook c6. So what's the crucial difference? It seems to gain a tempo. So say queen b7. So what happens here? In this position, if you go rook c7, there's queen b6 again, right? So maybe there's something strong in this position to do with these 2 pieces. So can anyone guess a tactic which might double attack these 2? I think I've spotted something which is useful. So yeah, queen d6, queen d6. So we're now threatening there and there. And if king a7, then rook c7, I think, because if you play rook takes, well, that's not as strong, I think, as just rook c7 now. Okay, so that's cleared all that up. So let's look. That was precision attack. Yeah, precision attack. 2 major pieces left in the attack. Rook c5, queen d7, rook c6. Precision. Impressive. If you look at all the defensive resources that were cut out from that. So let's have a look in overview and summary. So here, then black resigned after in that continuation. After rook c6, black resigned. So let's have a look at that again. So it's a Nimzo-Indian transposition with bishop g5. Black took on g3, and Miles was quite creative with his opening, but his bishops are not brilliant. Their quality is dropping a little bit. Especially the b7 bishop is visibly not brilliant with this continuation coming up. So all these pawns on light squares are on the same colour as this bishop. So positionally it looks a bit dodgy. So e5, which gives this important f4 square for knight e2 to f4. So strategically, it's not that pleasant. And now, you know, we see this, you know, stripping on the queen side. You want to undouble the pawns to create really more exploitable weaknesses. So you don't mind undoubling black's pawns. So that's often a major part of chess, that you know, theoretical weaknesses you want to sometimes swap them for more practical weaknesses to exploit, more exploitable weaknesses. And so here the pawns have been undoubled, but white now gets this very dangerous pawn which he fully supports and is prepared to sacrifice with knight c4 immediately to exchange for a different advantage. So very dangerous pressure. He's going to get his pawn back anyway, and now precision attacking moves. Rook c5, queen d7 threatening rook c8, and now rook c6 just overloads black. Much more accurate than rook c7 it seems. I believe because of queen b7, queen d6. So I hope you all got something from that game. So let's go on to another game, shall we? So against Helgi Olafsson, so Kasparov again white in this one plays d4. Now Olafsson was 2560, so Kasparov 2740, so still a big rating gap between them. d4 knight f6. We have again e6 and again a queen's engine, or will it be? Actually, black plays here d5. Pardon me. After knight c3, we have queen's gambit, decline territory, bishop g5, and you know, after h6, white gives up the dark square bishop, plays e3. After castles, he doesn't waste time potentially with bishop d3 because, you know, maybe d takes. He delays bishop d3 with rook c1. Now after c6, actually he does play bishop d3, knight d7. Now after castles, d takes. This looks like very theoretical opening moves. So both sides, you know, just developing their pieces. Black's got the problem bishop out of the opening, the c8 bishop, and you know, usually you might see this. You know, it might come on the diagonal usually. So a6, isolated queen's pawn. Or is it? Actually here, Kasparov doesn't go with the isolated queen's pawn. He plays knight takes d4, relying instead on piece pressure. This bishop's still bad here. Queen e7, and now knight e4. The bishop is preserved with bishop e5 for a moment. Queen h5 now. It looks quite attacking and direct, this queen h5, so there's a lot of pressure it seems on the black position. Rook d8, and white actually plays his own retreating move now, maybe influenced by the Miles game, I don't know. Bishop f1, so actually he's just unblocked the rook potentially, but at the moment the bishop's protecting entrance points, and plays bishop b8, which also gives it, of course, you know, bishop a7 flexibility to eye both diagonals potentially. But at the moment, this pawn structure is quite solid. Queen a5, intriguing move. Okay, it's marking out the slightly vulnerable dark squares. b6, evicting the queen a little bit. Queen c3. And black finally develops the queen's bishop now, and it's immediately lost actually after knight c6. It's immediately given up. Rook a7. It seems white has some sort of advantage from the opening. Visually, these look impressive. These rooks look a bit more awkward, especially this rook on a7. Black is Olafsson, Helgi Olafsson. ISL, what's the country code for ISL? Is does anyone know ISL, the country code? ISL country code, anyone? Iceland, of course. No, Israel weren't participating actually in this Olympiad for political reasons. Wars going on. They weren't participating. It was held in Dubai, and at the time there were wars going on. So g3, b5 was played, and b3 is now played. A waiting move, it seems. Okay, what is black up to here? He plays rook f8, scuffling back with the rook to f8. Bishop e2. So white seems to be taking his time. He's keeping these position, aggressive, and waiting for black to do something. Knight f6. We have an exchange of knights. And now queen b6. Queen e7. And now rook c6. So, okay. It looks impressive, but it is opposite coloured bishops here. So black's pawn structure looks fairly, solid. So how will black be broken down here? Bishop e5, bishop f3. Some manoeuvring occurs. Pressure on the c file. h4. So maybe, okay, it deprives the use of g5 from the queen. g6, which might be useful for h5 later. Rook c5. And in fact, h5 is played now. g5. King g2. It looks comfortable. Maybe this bishop can be seen as slightly better than this bishop, because this bishop's got a bit of granite here. This bishop's got free reign. The light squares here look potentially vulnerable. b4 is played. Yeah. So white's infiltrating, doesn't mind a trade of rooks there. Now bishop g4 looks as though there's a vulnerability that has been targeted now, because look at this. This bishop e6 could get at the black king and start winning material. Like all of these pawns could be dropping off potentially. Maybe black didn't play the absolute best defensive move in this position. Black played actually rook b7, and guess what Kasparov played here. But so, well, first of all, I guess rook b7 takes the eye off the rook from the glaring queen, and seems to defend f7. But what does Kasparov play here if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Anyone? Okay, anyone on Play Chess? There's been one suggestion, couple from stream. Just remember, sacrifices in chess often emphasize things that, they're like emphasis tools. When you sacrifice, sometimes, you don't have to think of material, but what you're emphasizing with the material investment. Kasparov himself always, in his videos, he talks about material, quality and time being the three major factors in chess. And so here he's prepared to give up material to get quality and time. If you've watched, there's an excellent series on YouTube, by the way, called My Story, where you see Kasparov's perspective himself on many of these key Olympiad games and other games. But that is one thing he constantly emphasizes: material versus quality versus time. So here bishop takes e6, giving up material for quality and time. So f takes, and now the black pawns are getting mowed. He just plays queen takes e6 check, and black here, believe it or not, resigns. This pawn is dropping off next with check. What would happen here? Or this bishop is loose as well. There's a battery there. So let's see what would happen. King f8. Or actually, there's also rook c8. there's a wealth of little options, but I think rook c8 is also very, very attractive. What would you guys play here? Would you go for this pawn, or would you play rook c8? It seems to me rook c8 is very strong. That should win the game, shouldn't it? Because also he's got an extra pawn or two. He's got an extra pawn. He's got 2 pawns up. So rook c8, it looks as though black's not going to defend after rook c8 anyway. Okay, so black resigned actually after queen e6. So if king h8, let's look at king h8. Again, you know, rook c8 works. King g7. Then we can go in for queen h6. It looks pretty devastating. I think, remember, there's queen d5 check if white doesn't play with the checks, but you can just play with the checks. You can play queen d6 if you want. Queen h7. So say king here, you got here, or is it? No, actually, we don't want to let black wriggle out here. You could, maybe you can take the rook here. Okay, so are we convinced anyway? So that's pretty crushing. So black resigned. He was peeled open in that last moment. So I do wonder actually about rook b7. But what else? It was opposite coloured bishops. Simplified material. So you can't move the queen without dropping b8. Could you have played queen, you know, e8? Was queen e8 a defence? Don't know. Okay, so that might require more analysis of the defensive tries, but rook b7 failed anyway, it seems. Okay, let's have a quick look in overview and summary. So it was a queen's gambit declined with pressure, with white not having the classic isolated queen's pawn. He refuses the isolated queen's pawn. He plays knight takes d4, and instead we get this opposite coloured bishop position, which seemed uncomfortable for black. A sweeping, majestic motion here, putting pressure on the queen side, getting the light square bishop. So we have the opposite coloured bishops, and now the sort of start of a probing happened with h4. So this was interesting. g6, if that wasn't necessary, it looks like a major concession, g6, in retrospect. But you know, what would white have done to improve the position? It seems g6 set up a target of some sort, but it's a difficult position for black to grovel here. So so these pawns on the dark squares, it looks as though it's closed, but there's a target on e6 lurking here, which is picked up on pretty soon. So rook b7, bishop takes e6. So it's made to look quite sweet and elegant and neat, all this attack. So okay, so let's have a look at another game, shall we? Okay, so this game is against Smejkal, CSR. So what's the country code for CSR? Does anyone know? Smejkal was 2540 CSR. So E4 actually. Kasparov switched to E4 here. and we get a classic Roy-Lopez. So check is the back here, is it? Okay, so a Roy-Lopez with knight f6 now. All standard sort of theory. d6. So standard Roy-Lopez moves. Rook e8. Bishop f8. After a4, queen d7. Okay, and in this position, Kasparov elects to close up the centre soon. He takes on b5, takes on a8, and just simply closes up the centre with d5. So he's for the moment shutting out the bishop, but later black's going to play c6. So black has got c6 at his disposal. Knight f1. For the moment, black waits with knight a6. Which also means that maybe b4 is useful, or knight c5, actually more likely to put pressure on e4 with both knights. Bishop g5, bishop e7, knight g3. So coming to that sensitive f5 square, typical in the Roy-Lopez, to get a knight to f5. That square is covered now with g6. And now queen d2. Kind of not only maybe supports the diagonal, but also supports against b4 potentially. It looks like a useful move, general purpose on both sides of the board. Bishop b7, and also of course actually queen d2 facilitates rook a1 as well to put pressure on the a file, and this happens. Rook a1, rook a8. Manoeuvring for the moment, bishop c2, which means actually b4 can be used to fix the b5 pawn, and maybe ganged up on, later. This b5 pawn could be a weakness in black's position, but for the moment black breaks open the centre a little bit. c6, white takes, giving a potentially useful d5 square though. And now given that d5 weakness, black wants to liberate, and white ties black down with rook d1. So a lot of pressure on d5. So it looks as though this could have come maybe from a Sicilian now. So we've got a semi-open c file as well, but it looks like a sort of potentially bad Sicilian position with that d5 weakness. But queen e3 implies that maybe there's an invasion point on b6 which could be handy. It supports e4 as well, so queen b7 guarding b6, putting more pressure on e4. So it looks useful enough. Bishop h6, which for the moment there's no direct attack, it seems, with bishop h6, but actually it does